there's a vibe coding platform that many still haven't heard of called Base44. And similar to some other solutions on the market, the idea is it lets you go from an idea to something tangible that you can look, feel, touch, and build on with just a few prompts. And in this video, I put it to the test by combining Base44 with an end-to-end workflow that helps you create beautiful slide decks in seconds. You're going to learn how to use Base44 as I walk through some of the features they have as well as some of the nuances they have compared to other platforms. And to make it a full circle video, I'll go through from the concept to the design to the prompts we'll use to actually putting it in action and seeing how Base44 handles it with just a few prompts. By the end of this, you'll have your own personal presentation maker with a brainstorming copilot, which many of us could benefit from. Let's dive right in. All right, before we jump into what we're gonna build, let's look into how we're gonna build it. So this is what Base44 looks like. It's a front end that should be very familiar if you've worked with vibe coding apps before. It has a text box staring you in the face, asking you to write a prompt. Here are some app categories that you can build in. And then very interestingly, there's this section that's called styling instructions. So if you're not the best at prompt engineering and you're trying to build with style before you even know the words to articulate what that style is, this can give you really good cheat codes on how to accomplish decent looking, very different looking UIs from what you're used to. One thing you notice with other platforms is that if you don't actually push them to their limit to change the way they look, a lot of them look like carbon copies of the same exact application. So right off the bat, you have a bit of a cheat sheet here where you can click on this like add style instructions and it will write the prompt for you. And naturally you could take this prompt, plop it into something like a ChatGPT or a Claude, and then manipulate it to take the exact structure, but basically making your own. And just to show you a sneak peek of the behind the scenes, this is what it looks like where you have a preview tab, which you're used to seeing, but what you're not used to seeing in some cases is when you go to this dashboard tab, you can control all kinds of things without having to involve third-party providers, let's say like Supabase, where you can create your own database, you can create analytics, you can attach domains, basically carry out everything, including using agents within the build itself, all within one platform. And this becomes super convenient when you're trying to add functionality or debug or look at analytics or users all in one central location. So now that we have that baseline behind us, we can focus on what we're gonna build today. It's not gonna be some to-do list app or something super basic that's boring to see. We're gonna build something that's more on the cutting edge and more on the frontier. So one of my favorite platforms called Gamma, that's been around ever since ChatGPT practically came out, has always helped people build slides in seconds. So you could put in a topic and then within seconds it would make a decent slide deck. And over time, it's gotten better and better at doing that. But one thing that many people, including myself, have been waiting for years is some form of API or backend way to crank out slides in seconds programmatically. And recently, we got exactly that. So we just got the Gamma Generate API that allows you to crank out 50 generations per month if you're on the Gamma Pro account. And that basically allows you to go through a workflow and create the workflow or do custom code and go through things like what the topics should be, the number of cards, the designs, the image style, etc. Since Base44 allows you to use custom code, you could theoretically take all of the Gamma API documentation, feed it in, give it enough context, and over a long enough chat window, you'd be able to accomplish a lot of the functionalities we're going for. But if you know me, I'm a lazy, productive dude, so I like to use tools where they fit best. So for me, Base44, I'm using it as my front-end plus functionality tool, and end-to-end, I am offloading a lot of the workflow management to take our prompt or our chat on the front end of the tool, send it to the back end, and then just give us back the response once it gets it. And our goal is to have a platform that looks kind of like this. And if you remember, that was the very first option. That's one of my favorite new styles called Neo-Brutalism. So in the prompts that you're gonna see, which are pretty hefty prompts, we're gonna go to actually create this platform in one shot. It's not gonna be functional in one shot because similar to a lot of platforms out there, you should have a foundational prompt first that you send that walks through the design, the user journey, how things should look and feel, and then you can start to lay around functionality right after. So in this case, we're gonna go for the user interface first, and then we'll focus on how to make this brainstorm tab work, where you can go back and forth with an AI agent that will allow you to go from an idea to an idea of how you should structure your presentation. And then we'll take that structure and then we'll create that presentation. And the goal is to be able to enter some very basic information, ideally information that the brainstorming copilot gives you, and then you just click a button, you wait for 1 to 2 minutes, and then you get a link that allows you to open up a brand new slideshow in Gamma that you can use, edit, and present with right away. And one stretch goal is I'm going to want to try to implement a history tab where we can go back and see other presentations we've generated in the past, so we maintain a running database of everything we've done before. So as a TLDR, we're going to try to harness the power of AI with this new capability in Gamma to automate something that a lot of us, including myself, loathe to do over hours to days. And in terms of the prompt engineering, I definitely went the extra mile to make a very beefy first prompt and a second prompt. Now, I'll go through the high level with you, but I'll make them both available along with the other assets in this video in the first link in the description below, so you can read it end to end, and more importantly, you can take the whole thing, paste it into an AI agent or a chat, and then try to recreate your own version of the prompt so you can use it with the specificity and design that I'm using here. So before we even read through it, I'm actually going to copy paste the whole first prompt and then just paste it into Base44 so it's at work while we're also reading through. So let me just paste that over, and we'll see how far we get with just the very first prompt. If we zoom in, let's take a look. So it says build a presentation creation app with 2 sections, a brainstorming assistant and a presentation generator. The app has a neo-brutalist design with thick black borders, bright colors, and intentionally rough aesthetics. And then I give it context as to what Gamma is, which is an app that we just went through right now. This is actually what Gamma looks like, where you have a series of slide decks that you can create just through prompts, uploading files, etc. So if we go back to here, we just walk through the app that the agent will be building in Base44. So I say create a single page app with 3 main sections: brainstorm, create, and history. Users can switch between these sections like a clear tab-like button in the header. All sections should use the same session throughout the user's visit, maintaining context. And then here I walk through how the brainstorming assistant should work and function, where basically it's prepping all the main parameters that you'll need to be able to send it through N8N to the Gamma backend API. So these are like the topic, which can be super vague or detailed. It can be who you're presenting to, as well as the tone, if you have a preference for the number of slides, as well as the image style, which in my opinion is one of the more important things. Like, should it be a very professional photorealistic thing, or do you want to play around and do some form of tech modern design? And in this section, we walk through what the AI assistant should do when it's trying to guide you through preparing the presentation and ideating. And for section 2, this is more so what should be on the presentation creator tab. All we're asking for is for a pseudo form where you can just enter the very things we isolated at the top, which is the topic, audience, tone, and number of slides and image style. And in this case, I'm just saying what the default values should be to make it as easy and frictionless as possible for someone who's onboarding, including myself, onto this platform to just run it and see what the results look like. And for the remaining sections, we go through things like designing the generation history tab. Again, we reinforce the neo-brutalist design and the look and feel of all the elements, the layout, the user experience, ideas for what the database should store, since Base44 can have a native database. You don't need a Supabase, you don't need external help. You can just build it within the platform itself, which is one big sigh of relief if you're not as technical. So AI helped me here. It came up with ideas on what to store in terms of session ID, topic, everything we're using to build the presentations, as well as the actual messages themselves and presentation requests. And before we get to prompt number 2, this is what prompt number 1 looks like. So we have that neo-brutalist design. Obviously, this is not going to be functional right now. If I say hi, either there's going to be some form of dummy data. There we go. So you have some form of dummy data. Or is it actually using some form of AI already? Let's see. Write me a Python script that will do tic-tac-toe. Curious, because usually I don't have anything functional on my first try. Oh, interesting. There is some form of language model behind the scenes, so that's a nice little breath of fresh air. Now, I want to use specifically GPT 4.1, so we're going to have to switch that up. So one thing before we even enter the second prompt, let me just see what history looks like and create. Very nice. That's exactly what we're looking for. Let's go into the dashboard. So if we go into the dashboard, because I want to change the actual UI to use GPT 4.1 mini behind the scenes, instead of what's being used right now by default, I need to go to settings and then app settings. And then I need to go to this backend functions. I want to activate it so it can allow me to manipulate the backend. So click on activate here. Okay, we should be good to go. And now it should be ready for my second prompt. Now my second prompt is going to be much more technical and beefy because we're going to want to hook it up to this end-to-end workflow. And if this looks a bit confusing or intimidating, I'll walk through it. It's actually very simple what it's doing. We just have to do a couple extra steps to make sure it does it properly. So once again, I'll take the second prompt here and we'll paste that in. It's not as long as the first prompt. And then we'll put it right here. There we go. And we'll have this running in the background while we go through the second prompt. And again, I won't go through this exhaustively, but I'll give you the high level picture. So one of the most important things I say is to use GPT 4.1 mini. Now, a lot of these platforms are using language models underneath the hood. And because they're using language models, these language models typically cut off at 2023 in terms of the native knowledge they have. So if you say use ChatGPT, it's going to use GPT 3.5 or GPT-4 because it knew what those were before its training ended. So that being said, we have to spoon feed, in this case, what GPT-4.1 mini looks like behind the scenes. So if we go into something like Perplexity, right here, we can just say something along the lines of, can you please look up the latest and greatest documentation on how to implement GPT 4.1 mini, which is a 2025 base model. Can you make sure that you get the chat completions notation right? Don't use the old way, use the newest way, and give me a Python snippet that I can give my junior developer. So in this case, I'll send that over. And then I just gave a little bit of nuance here to say 2025. So it gives me the latest and greatest version. So let's see, when you see chat completion with 2 C's, I know right away it's the older version. So we can just say chat completion, the version you used is old. We need to use the newer version of it. Trust me, there's one out there. So we'll send that out, and then hopefully we should get the right version. And it'll say you're correct. So it looks like this. It should be client.chat.completions.create. This is the method that I can see right away, means it's using the right notation. As soon as we have that, we could feed this into Base44, and in our case, we have it embedded in the prompt itself. So if you scroll to the very bottom here, I think it's either here, or I threw it in at the very bottom. Let me just take a look here. I think, yeah, right here. So OpenAI.chatCompletions.create, and I tell it exactly what the name of the model is because it's not aware of it in its training. And a lot of this is implementation details on how the AI assistant, the brainstorming assistant, should function. We give the code example, and then I tell it exactly how we're going to connect to n8n, which again is this automation software here where I can build a workflow, and what's listening into the workflow is this thing called a webhook. And a webhook is basically an ear that's waiting for a ping from another platform. And in this case, that platform is Base44. Base44 is going to send a bunch of data, ideally, when we click the button that it's created for us. And then that data is what we're going to use to plug into this AI agent right here, parse out that information, and then go through the rest of the workflow, which again, I'll get to shortly. This is going to be the address where we ping that information. This is the webhook address. And then this is ideally what I'm telling Base44 to send. So whatever it sends, there's going to be a series of metadata. And what metadata is basically information about the browser, the system, all this information that's not actually going to be tangibly useful for us. But what I want to make sure is we still have these in that payload that we sent to n8n, so we can easily take that, wrangle it, and use it to our advantage. And I don't want to get too technical, but just to walk through what this is saying to Base44 is what happens with these workflows where we ping information and we wait to get information back is sometimes these programs like Base44 or other platforms don't wait long, enough for the response. So it basically says, oh, it timed out or it didn't work. And all it had to do was just wait another 30, 40, 60 seconds for the response, and then it would be able to take that response from the workflow. So all I'm saying here is like, I'm telling it, be patient. It could take up to 2 minutes to create this slide deck. So wait for 2 minutes, and when you wait, ideally you're going to see stuff like this, where you have a presentation URL. This is going to be the URL we want to embed in the app, so you can click on it and just open it up. And then we want to be able to store things like the generation ID, which is the ID of the specific trial run of building the slide deck, as well as the status completed. This is going to be very important for our workflow to know that we actually have something completed and not pending. So if we go back to Base44, all we have to do is enter our OpenAI key right here, and I'll just enter that privately, we'll do save secrets, and then we'll go on to build the rest of the backend. And like you've seen, I like to multitask, so while this finishes, let's walk through the actual end-to-end workflow that's underneath the hood. So even if you're not as familiar with these platforms, I'll break it down in plain English. So again, we have something here that is waiting for a form of a ping. Once you get that ping, that information is going to get passed on to this AI agent. And this AI agent right here basically has an instruction prompt that's pretty verbose, but basically it says, you are a Gamma API assistant, convert the user's presentation request into a valid JSON object. This is basically a structure we're going to use so we can easily parse it out, take out all the good bits we want, and pass it on to the rest of the workflow. So ideally, this is the data we're going to get from Base44's app, and then we're just going to plug in that data right here. And then we're going to have some parameters where we want to make it dynamic so that if I say, you know what, I want 7 cards, not 10, we can accommodate for that. So we'll use the AI agent to manage that data, and we'll get an output like this, where it's basically create a detailed structured content for insert topic, and then it will create the draft of what those topics should be. And we'll use OpenAI's chat model here to allow us to do that. In this next step, in the parse output, we're just going to clean it up and prepare it. And then after that, we're going to actually send the request finally to Gamma. And the way this looks is you're going to have some form of request. And again, I'll make this workflow available to you so you can just plug and play. What you're going to have to just replace is your API key. So I'm going to delete this API key after this video, but all you have to do is just replace this with yours that you get. Again, you need a pro account on Gamma. And then you can keep everything as is and then click out. And then beyond that, we format the response. And next we wait 25 seconds. Sometimes these slides are so easy to build that they take anywhere from 15 to 20 seconds. But other times they can take up to a whole minute, if not a minute and a half. So one thing we're going to do, one thing that this whole loop here does, is we wait 25 seconds and then we check, is it completed or is it still pending? If it's pending, then we go into this loop. And this is what this checks right here. This check if generation complete. We'll double check whether or not we have a completion status. If not, we'll wait another 10, 20 seconds, which you can configure, by the way, by double clicking on this and changing this from 15 seconds to 30 to 50, what have you. And we'll keep going in this loop until we get an OK that is finally completed. Once it's completed, all we do is we ping back the response we asked for, which is right here, where you're going to get a presentation, a presentation URL, your generation ID, and more importantly, the slide completed status. And the result, at least on the front end, is we want just an easy button where you and I, as the user, can just click on it and we see something like this. In this case, you can see here, breaking barriers analysis, Q3 sales performance analysis, we have graphs, market dominance. Looks very pretty, not real data, but just to show you the power of actually creating these slide decks really quickly from such very basic, very detailed, but succinct prompts. And that's pretty much the workflow. So it's not rocket science. Again, all we're doing is taking request, using AI agent to structure request in a certain way, and then we're going to ask Gamma, please take the request, execute it. We're going to wait till it's done, and then we're going to serve it back to Base44. Okay, so apparently it's implemented. Now, with implementation, you need to be patient, because even though we have a pretty legendary prompt, not everything works on the first try if you've ever tried vibe coding before. So first thing we're going to do is just send a message, okay? We're going to say hi. Does that work? Let's see. It's thinking. Amazing. Okay, I'm here to turn your presentation into a badass visual punch. What's the topic? I want to make a topic on AI presentations. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Let's see if it pushes back on me. Let me think about that. Okay. And I want to see, do we stop here or can we keep going? I'm just going to say hello, just to double check. Okay, so it looks like it's getting stuck here. That's good that we know that. So let's try create. If I just send something over, let's say AI presentations. And then we just leave everything as is. So colleagues, professional, number of slides, and photorealistic. Let's just click on the generate presentation right here. Let's see if it does anything. And then how we can spy as to whether or not it's actually doing anything is we can go into Anyden. We can go into this tab here called executions. And then if it is running, we'll see a little thing at the very top that's spinning, buffering. And then it should say, yeah, there we go. So something is running. Whether or not we're going to get that something back in Base44 is a separate story. All right, so apparently it's ready. Let me just double check whether or not initend says it succeeded. So I can just double check here by going into editor, clicking back. Okay, it said it succeeded. Let me see what the result was here. So I can spy on and double click on this response. And this is basically the boomerang in our app. So a webhook listens in for information, and the final version of that webhook sends a boomerang back into the app with this information. So we should have this presentation if we click on the button we have in Base44. Let's just take a look. So this is about bananas. So let me just, oh, I think this is an older one. Okay, that scared me. Let's try this one. This should be hopefully about AI presentation. So let's take this right here and plug it into a brand new tab. Let's remove the little single quote here. We should have something, fingers crossed, about AI presentations. Okay, so we have something about AI presentations. Perfect. Now, the thing we actually care about right here is in Gamma, when we click on this, has it properly collected the URL? Has it parsed the URL? And has it embedded the URL in the right spot? So let's take a look. Because if this works, we're already cooking with a lot of gas. Perfect. So that works, and it only took us 2 prompts to get there. Now, mind you, they're pretty detailed prompts, but still 2 prompts at that. So all we have to do right now, at least for now, is I haven't checked the history tab. It looks like there's something in history. Whether or not it's being stored, we can actually check by going to the dashboard, and then we can click on right here on the data tab. This is where any database stuff is going to be stored. So it looks like it did listen to us. We have a conversation table, a message table, and a presentation request table. So if we click on conversation, okay, so there we go, AI presentations. If we go on message, okay, it's seeing the messages we went back and forth. And then presentation request, photorealistic completed. Okay, cool. I think one thing we're missing, if I just double check, we don't have the URLs of the presentations. We want to store that as well. So because our next steps here are going to be a bit more experimental, I'm going to use the discuss mode right here to allow me to send a prompt over and have it plan what it's going to do, and then we'll implement that plan. So I noticed in the back and forth with the brainstorming agent, it stopped working after the first exchange. So I said, hi, it said, hey, and then I gave it my idea, and then it said, let me think about that endlessly, and it refused to actually give me a response back. So I think there's something misfiring or getting hung up in the back end. So we need a plan to be able to investigate that. On the history tab, it looks like we're storing the actual generated presentations, which is awesome. But I want to make sure we're storing the URLs we're getting from those presentations from our end-to-end workflow in our database, so we can go and reference all the different presentations we've put together. So we'll send that over, and then it should come up with a plan really quickly. It should be much quicker than usual because we're not building, we're just trying to break down. And if we zoom in right here, you can see it says, you're right to point out those issues, what's happening. It comes up with a plan to investigate and fix. And then it comes up with the history tab URL storage plan. So that looks good in general. So I'm just going to say, you have my blessing to proceed. Don't let me down. And then we're just going to send that over. And then we'll wait for the next version. And because we actually have a lot of the pieces well put together, our design looks decent, we can most likely be able to fix at least one, if not both of these issues in one shot. All right, so let's try this again. Hi. Okay, it should ask me what I'm trying to do. Okay. My topic of the presentation is the future of slide decks with AI. Okay, so we'll send that over. Hopefully it should, okay, it collapsed. So let's see. Fix with AI. Let's see how far that takes us. So we just had the AI fix once again. It basically broke down its mistake. Apparently it's a classic rookie noob mistake. And now it works where I said what the topic is right here. And now let's keep going with the conversation. So now it's asking me, what tone am I going for? Professional, casual, inspiring. I'm going for professional. Right, okay, and then it should come up with the next natural question. So it's basically holding my hand. What's the tone? Ideally technical. Now, one thing I'm noticing in the UI here, we could update, is every single time I'm sending a message and it responds back, it's not auto shifting to the very bottom. I have to scroll, which is not ideal. I think I already answered that. We're going for technical. Okay, so we're definitely stalling on here. We've been asked this 3 times. So now I'm going to do a 2-in-1 shot. Again, I'll go to discuss right here. Okay, so it looks like we're stalling on the third question, which is what's the tone we're aiming for. I've been asked that 3 times, I've answered that 3 times, and we're not progressing forward. Also, one really annoying thing is every single time I send a question or a query, every time you come back with a response, I have to physically scroll down to see the message. So it would be good if it auto scrolled down to the latest and greatest message. So again, we'll send this over in discussion mode so it can reflect on the next steps, and then we'll implement those next steps. And after a few back and forths, we finally have a back and forth conversation where we go from me saying hi to the assistant responding, basically gauging all the things and pulling all the things we need for the presentation to give me a summary of all the main things I want to send over to the actual presentation tool. So again, we could go to create. Now we have everything we need. So the future of AI presentations in tech. We'll keep that spelling mistake there. We can keep it professional. Let's do modern. I think that's one of the options. Yeah, something like modern. And then we'll do generate presentation. And then we should get the link that was working already before. And if you're wondering what was the problem, I noticed something. I think that basically what was happening behind the scenes, it was trying to program and just collect every response and send a canned answer instead of actually using GPT 4.1 mini or any AI at all. So it was waiting for a response. And if my response wasn't an exact word or the word it was waiting for, it would just fail. So I don't think it was using language models behind the scenes when I tried to shift it. So I basically refreshed it of that. And then as soon as we did that, it was able to re-implement GPT 4.1. And now you saw that back and forth conversation. All right, and we have the presentation right here. And if we click on it, you'll see it opens this tab, which is the evolution of AI presentations. Without us even editing it, it looks already really clean and ready to go. Obviously, we can add our own touch to it. And then if we click on close and go to history, you can see now we maintain history of all the presentations we create, which is super cool. And we could always go back to our brainstorming agent, clear the chat and restart if you wanted to, and then go from there. So we've actually put this together in honestly less than half an hour in total. And if you want to be able to recreate this, you can take the prompts I put together, the end-to-end workflow, everything you need to be able to recreate this experience, knowing that you might have to go back and forth a little bit just to iron out these small little bits and details. But with that being said, Base44 is actually a really quick platform. You don't have to wait 4 or 5 business years for every change, and it's really quick at understanding what you need to do, and most importantly, you have full visibility in terms of what data you're collecting, the analytics of your platform, the security of the platform, as well as in general logs, and you can even create some form of API to be able to access different parts of your backend of your platform. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. So give it a try. I have the link to Base44 down below pinned as a comment. You can check it out there, and I'll see you in the next one.